Vice President of Relationship Equality Foundation. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. Does anyone need audio assistance, visual assistance, anything like that? I want to make sure that we have everybody's needs covered before we get going. Everybody's good? Fantastic. Like I said, my name is Billy Holder. I am the Vice President of Relationship Equality Foundation. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, nationally run, based right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Our home office is about 10 minutes away in Fayetteville, and we have events and people all over the country. Right now we're gearing up for our Chicago event, Chicago Non-Monogamy Conference in May. So if you're from the Midwest area or know people who are, please get with me later and I'll give you the info for that. And that way we can make sure we get folks up there. It's their first year inaugural event, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So community organizing is a pretty generalized topic. Most people think getting the people in the community organized in your organization and getting them to events and that sort of thing. When you say community organizing, that's usually what a lot of people think of. As leaders and organizers, we play a little bit bigger role than just getting people together. And I want to talk some about that today. I'm going to talk about the steps involved in that process, and I want to talk about intersectionality. Intersectionality in our community is huge, and too many times we see a lot of organizations not take full advantage of that intersectionality to the best of their ability. So a little bit about me. Not only am I the VP of REF, I'm also one of the original co-founders of Atlanta Polyamory Meetup Group. I'm one of the co-founders of Atlanta Polyamory Incorporated, one of the co-founders of Atlanta Poly Weekend, co-founder of REF. I've helped run CoastCon, Crescent City Con, Exoticon, what else? Several other conventions, science fiction conventions and conferences down on the Gulf Coast area. My mom helped start CoastCon like back in the 1970s, so it's kind of in my blood to do this whole convention, conference, event organizing, and community organizing. So today, objectives: identify the community. So that identify the reason for taking on the role, the needs of your target community, determine the structure of whatever your organization is going to look like, recognize the overlapping and related communities, and discuss the overarching community impact and greater acceptance of your organization. Somewhere I put a marker down. No, I'll have to find it here. Or use a different color. Blue works. So, to identify the community that you want to organize in. Many of us have multiple things, interests, or we're involved in some level, different ways, in different communities. So you probably already know your community. You know who they are, you know what they like to do, where their focused interest is, and why they do some of the things they do. But do you know who else is doing similar work in your community? That's a question we have to ask. But too many times overlapping communities see other individuals and groups doing similar work as competition. And that can really hurt community organizing efforts, because remember, we're not just organizing people, we also want to organize other groups and organizations within our community so that we can have a better reach overall. So before you jump in with feet first and you're gonna take on this role, I met someone here last night. It was here last night. I've been in a lot of places this week, so forgive me if my days get blurry. I was down in Jacksonville over the week, teaching at Sex Week, and now I'm here. So I met someone here last night who inherited a community. Anybody else in the room ever inherit a community? That was a gift.
And I love it. Thank you.
Yes. No. Oftentimes we do inherit communities from people who have either grown on to do bigger and better things, just gotten tired, maybe someone passed away, and the community is floundering. So sometimes it takes somebody to step up. And that's when this process of identification of your community comes in really handy. So if you want, I can write those down, or you can So ID community. And we do that through the who, what, why, where questions. Now, I saw some faces change when I said who's doing similar work and other work. Sometimes you don't want to work with those people, right? Sometimes they're difficult to work with. Sometimes they're unaccommodating. Maybe they don't want to work with you. These are all challenges that we're going to run into. And you can't work with everybody. That's just part of the game. And we have to accept that. But somewhere, there's somebody close to you, neighboring city, neighboring state, that's doing very similar work that you could probably team up with. With Relationship Equality Foundation, one of the things that we do, there's some flyers out about a program we have called the RWE. RWE stands for Alternative Relationship Education Workshop Event. It's a CE track for mental health providers. We're the awarding organization. We get certifications from the different overseeing boards. And one of the ways that we promote this is by finding other organizations that are doing the exact same thing we're doing and cross-advertise. One of the organizations that we're working with is actually the sponsoring organization for our ASECT certifications. ASECT is the American Association of Sex Ed Counselors and Therapists?
Sex educators, counselors.
Yes, sex educators, counselors, and therapists. I almost got it right that time. I keep Anna to keep me straight. That's
Or keep it queer.
or keep me queer, whatever. You know. As long as I'm not going off the trail. So we were trying for a couple of years to get ASEC certification. It's very hard to get because they have some very strict criteria that you have to meet. And along came Ruby Johnson from Poly Dallas Millennium, and we were talking at a conference one day, and she mentioned that she is a provider for ASEC certifications. I went, oh really? How convenient, because we need those. And so through sponsorships and that sort of thing, Poly Dallas Millennium is sponsoring our ASEC certifications at our next 2 CE events, which will get us enough CE events under ASEC to apply for our own provider status. So it's stepping stones, and that's one of the many examples that we've had here at REF of working with people who's doing similar work. When I was with Atlanta Poly, there was a group that wanted to do different things. And so they spun off this other event, and we'll talk about them a little bit in a little while. And we worked with them to promote their stuff. So the next step is you figured out who, what, why, where. There's this community that needs you. You want to step up and do it, but why? Why you? What is the reason driving you to want to step up and take lead of this community? Sometimes it's love of community, feelings of commitment. Maybe you've been a member for a long time and you've wanted to help out but never had the time, and then the right time comes along where you now have extra time and you can step into that role and the leadership is ready to move on. Sometimes that's what happens. And sometimes people step into that role because they like patting themselves on the back. And they like having a big ego and it makes them feel important. So it's really important to ask yourself, what is this drive? Why do I want to do this? Is this for me or is this for the community? You know, are you going at this alone? Because sometimes that can be tough. If you and by alone, I don't just mean you don't have any backup. Maybe you feel like there isn't anybody else there to do it. Nobody else is doing it, so I might as well. It's not really a healthy attitude to get into community organizing with. Trust me, I've done it. Well, nobody else stepped up to lead, so I guess I will. And while it can work and you can be an effective leader that way, a lot of times it leads to regret, resentment, burnout early. You just don't give it your all. So for me, community organizing, every bit of me is about the community. If I'm serving a community, they're the most important thing for me. I don't care about accolades, posters, my name being on the wall, a plaque, a thank you note. Yeah, do I get those things? Sure. Is that why I go out and do these conferences and sponsorships and talks at events? No. I do it because I love the community and I want to see it grow. And I hope that's why you do organizing. So, next. Now we've answered why. I want to do it for community. So what does the community need or want? This one's probably going to need more because I'm going to ask for some audience participation to see if any of you that have inherited communities or are members of communities and leadership spaces have ever had someone come to you and say, we want this. Your community's not giving us this specific thing. We want two-tailed pony shows every third Thursday of June-Vember, and you're just not giving it to us. So somebody in the organization could go, hey, I have connections, I can do that, right? And that person might be you. So some needs or wants. What's missing? That's one of the questions you need to ask if you're going to take over a group or start your own group. What is missing from this group, this community? Maybe you've heard people talk about things. Like that group that spun off from Atlanta Poly, they wanted more adult-focused nighttime events. And I've got kids. I can't do weekday bar in the city kind of events because I've got to be home to feed my daughter, get her ready for school the next day. My work starts really early. So when they came out and said, well, we want to start doing this, I said, go for it. Do it. I support you 100%. And so did the rest of the leadership of the group. And they spun off and it's Atlanta Poly Nightlife or something like that is the name of their Facebook group.
Are they still running?
Occasionally. But I don't think the person that was running it is as involved as they were. And nobody's picked up the ball to run. So that happens too. So what about, is there anybody in the room that's had this kind of experience, something that's come up in your community that you want to share? Maybe it'll spark ideas in other people's, because I don't want to just lecture everybody. Let's have fun and talk together. We're a community. Okay.
We moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and immediately sought out what there was of the community, and there wasn't much. There was one group called Flogs that was meeting irregularly. So what we did was we wanted to have our own get-together munch, and the spin we took on it though was we wanted it to be both kinky and poly. So we created a separate munch for those interested in both kinky and poly, called the Myrtle Beach Poly Kinky Munch, and created a second offshoot of that other one.
So it's diversifying the community field.
And also, to add to what he's saying too, is because it's such a lack of community down there, one of the things I noticed is there was a lack of information. So one of the things we started doing is bringing presenters in, or every month we bring information. It's done a little bit differently, where we bring information or ideas and we tell them, let us know what you want to know. Let us, tell us what you want. Like we just had somebody do Dragon Tales, different things like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's great. Did I see a hand over here? In the back?
Actually, from the same region. So we started another group just south of there called the Academy. And like the name implies, we're sort of focusing more on the educational side of things, doing monthly classes, providing actual hard brick-and-mortar play space for people to come to play, since that didn't exist.
So ensuring that there is a continual place, one location that continues to happen. Secured location, secured venue. That's a really important thing, because then people know where you are and they can always come back to you. If your meetups or munches or whatever you call them hop around from restaurant to restaurant monthly and they're on a hidden website where people can't get the address, then it's tough to find.
I just wanted
Another
to
one?
point out
And then I got you.
one more thing, what you said about people not helping the cross. He's been very helpful and supportive when we started, he was one of the few people who came all the time to help support and had offered people to come and tell us about it and stuff like that.
Right.
So we have been very lucky with the groups we've had, that the people we do have in the community are very supportive. As if you're doing something good, they're there for you.
Right. That's good. That's good to know. Did you share that information with other people who might be in the room and wanting to start a group? Maybe they're in your region and have an idea. Now they know, hey, there's support for me. I can call out, and maybe somebody will come up to you later and say, hey, I want to do this thing. That's really important to know. In this side, in the back.
Our community needed kind of some of all of that. They needed a brick and mortar play space that was inclusive. Rather than being exclusive, we needed a place where everybody, regardless of identity, dynamic, preferences, could go and feel welcome.
I didn't spell that
So
right.
we almost made a bigger community out of a bunch of small communities.
So unification.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that
Our name is the Academy as well.
Unite the clans. Unite the clans.
I actually, in our community right now, we're having the opposite. We're forming a leather women's group because there's a need for that in our community.
Safe space for them.
Yeah, safe space.
Yeah. Needs for safe space. All of these are very valid things. You know what? Safe space brought me back to something I should have said in the beginning, and I'm going to back up to the intro section real quick. Safe space for me in my talks. If you want to take my picture and post it, that's fine. Don't take anybody else's picture and post their picture. We're all following the nice rules of raising our hands to ask questions and being adults, but I try to make that a opening statement. Safe space. If you don't feel comfortable, please feel free to stand and leave. No one will take offense. I want this to be a safe and open and welcoming space for everyone. So please, if I do something that offends you, call me out, call me in. You can take me to the side later and call me out. That's fine. But please let me know. Thank you. Okay, so that disclaimer's over. I didn't spell space right either because my brain went that other way. So this is all of this ties together though. Diversifying your options of available information for your community by adding education and informational tracks, by adding a secure brick and mortar venue, by adding more inclusive programming and access. Access is a huge one right now. Because sexual and gender inclusivity is such a big hot topic, a lot of ability inclusion is less talked about. And differing abilities need inclusive space as well. And this is something that I find sometimes even I overlook in my planning. So always trying to find a venue that has accessible space. When we do our RWEs, we use the LGBT Center here in Atlanta because they are 100% accessible. They are accessible for different abilities, they're accessible for different and differing genders, and they have all gender neutral restrooms. It's just a really nice space, and I helped build it, so I'm a little partial to using it for that reason. So that's a big one. When we think of inclusivity and safe space, oftentimes we get kind of railroaded and blinded into sexuality and gender inclusivity in safe space. It needs to be everybody. You know, even I've been part of a couple of conferences and groups, you wouldn't think this, that have a men's only group for male victims of sexual assault. And I actually got to take part in a workshop about that, and it was really, really emotional. Being a member of that subset of the world, having a space at an event that was I could go and talk about my experiences was really good. So it's not just those what society says are underprivileged or underrepresented groups. There are a lot of subcultures that need representation. So thinking outside of your box a little bit when you're adding in inclusive programming. Unification, that's what we're talking about by talking to other groups and getting everybody, on the same page. We work a lot, Ref works a lot with Atlanta Poly now. We work a lot with a lot of other groups too, but because we're in the same city, we do a lot of work together. We share volunteers. We sometimes it's like we're still one. I mean, at times it's like we're still one organization, but we're not.
Especially when I'm looking at my emails.
Yeah. Safe space. Anybody add anything else? What about wants? Has anybody come to you and said, we want X? Can you make this happen in your group, in your
Yeah,
space?
like particular activities, like some people say, we want karaoke, some say, we want bowling, we want education on this particular topic, we want mixers so we can meet people, we want speed dating, we want blah, blah, blah.
It's a nightmare.
Constant.
We did it
Constant
twice.
saying, no,
We did it twice.
no.
But now you're just a party pooper. You won't let us do anything.
Feel free to go do it. I'm not doing it.
Right. And that's the kind of the trap we fall into is, well, if you want it, make it happen.
Right.
And while that can be very valid response, if you don't have the time and you're laying out a boundary, it can also be very off-putting to some people who don't know how to do it, right? And I know we have more of those don't know how to's than we do know how want to's. Because, yes,
Well, you know, a lot of professional organizations have what they call special interest groups, or SIGs. I know even in the model railroading community they have that. And
Yeah.
the thing is that, you know, if somebody can start it and it looks like it's a go, then, you know, the overarching organization will be able to say, okay, we'll support it, we'll advertise your stuff and things of that sort, but you guys gotta run it.
yep. That's exactly what we're doing with Chicago Non-Monogamy Conference. They came to us and said, Chicago wants a conference. And we're like, okay, so what experience do you have? None. How much capital do you have? None. Do you have a website? No. What do you need? A website, capital, and experience? Okay, well, here's what we can do for you. You know, and we said, if you will put forth the person power, the people power, the groundwork, and the legwork, we'll supply you the funding for your venue, we'll supply you with a website, and we'll supply you with our conference planning package that shows the generals as to how to run a conference, which is my class later today. We'll be talking about that, so I won't get into that. And they're like, okay. And so many times people say, okay, we'll do it, and then they drop the ball and no follow-up. This group in Chicago picked the ball up, hit the ground running. Their event's been live for 2 weeks on the web, and they've sold a quarter of the tickets to their show already. And I'm like, these people are going places. This is a group of people that we want to support. So it works really well. Special interest group is a good way to do it.
You know, there's also the really niche interest groups. Like I run a thing on E-Play, E-STEM experimenters group in San Jose. And, you know, not everybody's interested in it. We get 5 people at a meeting, good meetings. We meet once every other month. And, you know, but it serves that interest, and the interest continues.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of segues right into my next little point here, which is needs assessment. If you aren't getting this kind of feedback and you're holding these events and maybe 3, 4, 5 people are coming and they're getting fulfillment, but you want to engage more of the people in this particular thing, then it's time to sit back and do a needs assessment and look at maybe how your marketing, targeting, presenters, whatever, aren't meeting exactly what the needs are. So a great way to do that is survey your community. There are so many free survey tools. SurveyMonkey, MailChimp is a good one. They talked about it in the class before this one with social marketing or social media and marketing. MailChimp is free for up to 2,000 subscribers. I don't know if you know that. It's free for up to 2,000 subscribers. Anybody in the room got more than 2,000 people in their group? Then it's free. Use it. It's such a powerful tool. It's really powerful to communicate, and it's secure. You upload the list, or you get people to subscribe through your website, or you can send them an email and say, click here to subscribe. You don't even have to have a website to subscribe people. Then you can send out blast notifications and surveys. They have built-in survey stuff in MailChimp. So it's a great way to get a needs assessment. Meetup does it too, but not as well if you use meetup.com. They do it, but it's not as good. And it's $72 every 6 months. Or I think it's still $72, I don't know.
It's
Might have
more
gone
than
up.
that now, I think.
Is it more than that now?
It's up between 80 and 100.
Glad I'm not on Meetup anymore. Yes.
One of the things too that I learned is sometimes people just don't know you're out there, and being one of the things Christian told me when I first started was make sure I was consistent with when I had everything, and also
Yes.
let people know. And one of the things that's funny, or the other group that we have down there, we had one lunch and there's 27 people, and somebody walked up to Sir and said, "How did she get all these people?" And he goes, "She works at it. She will message, she'll go on FetLife and see there's all these people who just joined FetLife and they're in the area, and they're one group that they're a member of. FetLife announcements, they know nothing that's in Myrtle Beach. She'll send them an email and say, look, just in case you're interested, da 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 da. And oh, by the way, if you're scared to come by yourself, I will meet you beforehand and walk you in, or meet you out for coffee so you know someone when you walk in."
That's great. That's a really great way to do it. Something to consider. Running a group is a second job if you have a first job, and a third job if you have a second job. And you have to put the time in. It's a very good point, especially for new groups. More established groups, word of mouth usually gets you around. But for new groups or groups that have been struggling for a long time, maybe have new leadership. We turned the leadership of Atlanta Polyamory over 3 years ago. No.
Yeah.
I still get emails asking about what Atlanta Polyamory is doing. And it's not any fault of anyone's, it's just people from 3, 4, 5 years ago that were part of the group that left and now have come back, or moved away and have come back. They remember me. So got to get that word out there that, hey, new people under new management is a great way to do it, right? And so when you take over a group, you can put, hey, under new management. That's important point to make, is reaching out and making that contact. And that's part of something you can get out of your needs survey, your needs assessment survey. So what are some things that we look for in needs? Demographics. What people are we serving? If you look around your meetup group or munch and every single person in the room looks like you, and that's not what you want your group to be, you have a responsibility to change it. And you have the opportunity and ability to change it because you have the knowledge that there's something missing. I had the fortunate experience to go to a conference where I was the only person in the room that looked like me. I was the only white guy at this conference. There was a white woman there, and there was me. It was the Association of Black Sexologists and Clinicians, and we sponsored the event. I tell you what, that's an eye-opening experience when you are the only person in the room that looks like you. And it really gave me perspective on when I come back to my own events and look around and everybody looks like me, hey, we're doing something wrong, we've got to. So part of our needs assessment internally is that we want to be more diverse in our membership. Well, your board and officers are usually a direct representation of your membership. Because in our case, we're a 501c3, our board and officers are elected by the membership, right? So in order to change what our board, our membership looks like, we have to change what our board looks like. So we have started the process of getting out and contacting people of color, queer people, all different walks of life, not just here in Atlanta. Because we're a national C3, we want representation from all over the country, right? So demographics don't just include race, religion, and all that, also geographic location, if that's something you want to do. So demographics, that's one.
Yeah, maybe one of the outfalls of the needs assessment is that you may not want to be diverse. If what you are doing is a group on, say, Catholic priests, because they all share the same thing, you know, not
Right.
the same altar boys, but
Maybe. Polygamous Catholic
But-
priests, maybe.
you know, yeah, if you try to make it diverse to include the, you know, Congregationalists and the Lutherans and things of that sort, then it's going to kind of dilute what they're there for.
Right. So how would you classify that in needs assessment?
Well, one of the needs assessment is how diverse do you want it to be?
So yeah, diversity assessment and need. I cannot spell, y'all. I'm just gonna warn you now. IVIRSITY. Sure, then we'll call that diversity. I can't spell.
Start a group with that.
At what point does the, say using this example, you have a group that's looking to be very focused and or sort of one subject area, and you're trying to be more inclusive in your community outreach, you sort of come to a level of conflict there. How do you try to resolve that?
So, if I'm understanding your question, it's how to resolve the conflict between basically special interest focus group
Well,
and your or
well, basically a lack of diversity versus the inclusivity that you're attempting to add to your community.
well, I think
Because a lot of times you end up with, as was mentioned earlier, you have multiple siloed communities.
Right.
You're trying to draw them into a central area. So you have these, I want to be with a bunch of people like me,
mhm.
conflicting with, I want to be in a larger, more diverse, more interesting.
Well, I think that takes a bigger look at the overall cultural structure of the organization at that point. Are these two conflicting ideas something that can coexist under the organization and its or group and still meet its mission? And if so, do you have any kind of crossover between these two groups? And if you do, where you do, how can you leverage that on a monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly basis to bring everyone together for different events? And then that promotes the crossover where this group gets to have their safe space, this group gets to have their safe space, but they're all part of a bigger, overreaching mission and organization. I know that Atlanta Poly has a queer support group, right?
We used to.
You
We
used
used
to?
to have a LGBTQ and allies meet up because people asked for that space. And I was hesitant to do it because I wanted the inclusivity. I wanted everybody to be welcome at everything. They asked for it, so I gave it to them. And then they stopped showing up. At that one, 2 months in a row, it was me and the other board member.
Right.
And they started showing up at everything else, and I was like, cool. I'm letting that one go, and now we're just as inclusive as I wanted in the first place.
And sometimes
They
that's what it
just needed
takes.
to know that somebody there looks like them.
Bingo.
And so they had that space to show up and meet me, because I'm president and I'm queer as hell. You wouldn't know.
Get out the front door. So yeah, and sometimes that's what it takes, is giving them what they asked for as long as they want it, and allowing them to participate in it. And some of them may never come to anything else because they only want that space that looks like them. And then some of them, you may get a few over, and then they'll go back to that other space. Man, we went to this thing and everybody was there. We went zip line and then we went to dinner. It was really cool. And then, hey, more people might come over from the other group. And maybe that's how you foster the inclusivity that you want, by giving the people the individual spaces that they need.
Yeah, I guess one of the things you have to consider is diversity impact on, if you're providing a space or a community or, you know, a meeting place or whatever, and you know, you offer it to the women's community, you offer it to the men's community, you offer it to you know, other communities and things of that sort. We had a dungeon in San Jose that they finally started men's parties, and the men really came and enjoyed it until they found out that the women that came there for the women's parties wanted to sage the place before, you know, to get rid of the male energy. And the men found out about it, and they stopped going. Now, you're offering it to diverse communities,
Yeah.
but when there's conflicts like this, you need to either you know, head it off, or you know, try to reach out an accommodation, or you know, tell the women's community, no, you can't you can't do the saging, or guys live with the saging.
I think that goes a little bit to safe, sacred space training as well. What happens here stays here. You know, kind of the Vegas rule. And it's only to the honest people are going to uphold that, right? But no, you're absolutely right. You have to have a conflict resolution contingency plan. So if somebody does say we want this, and then it's a safe space, and they violate that safe space and go tell everybody else, and then those people that you didn't want there start showing up because that group needed a safe space. Say it's the men's victims of sexual assault, and somebody speaks out about that location, time, and the participants, and then an abuser shows up. Whoa, now you got a real issue. Now nobody feels safe in that space anymore, and you're the one organizing the event. How did this happen? So safe space, sacred space rules are really important in those isolated communities under a larger organization. I'm not really qualified to give safe space training because I haven't had any myself, other than what little bit we get at the university to qualify for Title IX. So as far as teaching or leading it, I'm not the person for that. I would much rather have someone else talk about safe space training. All I know are the rules that I say at the beginning of mine. Let's keep it in here. Personal experiences are in here. Science and facts can go to the world. That's kind of my general rule of thumb. I think identifying your limitations is a huge part of a needs assessment. What are your limits to supplying needs? So, ID limits. You can call them limits, you can call them boundaries, whatever you want to call them. If somebody says, hey, we want to go zip lining, and you call the zip line place and it's $40 a head, so you go back to your group and go, hey, it's $40 a head, the group can cover 10 of that. Everybody else has got to come up with $30 a head. And they're like, well, we can't do that. Then guess what? We're not going ziplining. If the group can't do it, the group can't do it. No matter how hard you want to give the community something, sometimes you just can't. It's not within your ability, it's not within your power, it's not within your funding, whatever the limitation is. But when that happens, I think it's very important to be crystal clear to your community about the reason and transparent, if at all possible. Now, maybe it's some other reason that you can't be transparent about, but this is transparency in community organizing is really important for the membership, because that's how you build trust with your community, is that if they believe you are honest and open with them about everything, and they know they can come to you and ask, hey, what's the balance in the group's checking account? I've got an idea, but oh, you want to start planning events? Cool, let's get you in here as an event organizer, and come to the next staff meeting. You can sit in and listen, or whatever. And that helps because now they feel like they're included, and they're investing in the organization, in the community. Yes, it sounds a little manipulative. I'm not going to sit here and say that it doesn't. But when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I have this idea and you can't do it because you don't have the time, you give them every opportunity to do it. Don't just say, okay, it's all yours then, and leave them with no guidance. Let them come to a staff meeting. Our meetings are open to the public because we're a 501c3. Oftentimes we run them on our YouTube channel. We'll record them and upload them later or something like that. We started doing that mainly for accessibility, but then we're like, you know what? We owe it to our membership. If they want to know what's going on, a written record of the minutes is one thing, but actually hearing the conversation and hearing the tone and inflection of voices and whatnot is another. Being present in the space is a big part of that. Once you get interested people coming to those planning meetings, you'll know real quick who wants to be a part of planning and who doesn't. Real quick. It'll be very apparent very fast. We helped a group in North Carolina kind of get the ball rolling, Charlotte Poly Network. We kind of helped them get the ball rolling early on in their days, and the person who is the organizer of that group is actually our treasurer for REF now. And they have had great success with the, do you want to see something happen? Make it happen. They've had great success up there. They've got Durham going on now. They've got, I think they've got one in South Carolina that they just started, like on the northern end of South Carolina. They've got 5 or 6 meetups a month going on now in different parts of North Carolina and South Carolina. And it's all membership run. Somebody had an idea and they gave them the access, the information, the ability to do it. So part of your needs assessment beyond limits would be personnel and interest. Which is what we were just talking about. Personnel and interest. So that stuff. And if y'all want, we can leave these up after. You can take pictures of them if you want. So if your hand gets tired of writing. And all of this falls into directional drive. Where do you want to see this go? If this is your brainchild, and this is your baby of a community that you are like grabbing from the mud and the dirt, and what's your goal? Where are you taking it? That's something early on in my community organizing days. I never set a goal for the organization. Some organizations call it a strategic plan. Some call it an annual goal. There's different names for it. But your direction and drive, where do you want to be? You know, do you want your organization to be a nationally recognized educational organization that provides CE tracks and sex week training? Or do you just want to be a local small community that goes out and has dinner? Both are equally good and valid and needed in every community. So what do you want to do with your group? So, figure it out. Who, what, why, what you want to do, your direction. We done it at 4 or 4:30? 4:30, right? 4. Okay, I better speed up a little bit then. Just a little bit though. The conversation is great, and I'm learning things too. Yeah, let me get that on roll. Structure. Structure. What do you think of when we say structure?
How it's made.
How it's made, organizational structure. So do you want to be the small group that doesn't have a lot of money, doesn't want a lot of money? Do you want to be that nonprofit? Do you want to be a for-profit? Do you want to be an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp? Do you want to be publicly traded? Eventually, you know, that all goes into that directional drive, right? And thinking about your structure has a lot to do with how your organization and how your community is going to grow. There are some communities that don't want that legal structure because they're afraid of putting someone's name on a state document. Guess what? The state doesn't care whose name is on what or what the organization's name is or purpose. All they care about is getting that annual fee every year to keep your organization registered. We had the same fears when we started Atlanta Polyamory Inc. We filed with the state of Georgia, Secretary of State's office, and we're like, we just know they're going to deny our application because of what we are. They're just, because if they approve it, then they're sanctioning polyamory as an organization. Guess what? They didn't. We're still in operation as a different entity now. When Atlanta Poly took over Atlanta Polyamory, same thing when they filed. We thought when we filed for our 501c3, this will never get approved. It did. Because they don't look at the names. They look at the information, make sure all the blanks are filled out correctly, and they go from there. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you legal advice. If you want to do that, speak to a lawyer. But my experience has been the state really doesn't care whose name's on the paper or what you're doing as long as it's not illegal.
Yeah, 99% of the cases, that's true. In 1% of the cases where somebody files a lawsuit, then the Secretary of State starts looking at, okay, who's on the list?
Mm-hmm.
We need to, serve the person of service that's on the record,
Mm-hmm.
and things of that sort.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often,
No, it doesn't.
but it does happen.
And that is a risk that you take. But a lot of times people, the biggest concern I hear about putting a name on a state document is the state will know who's involved with our organization. No, they don't. They really don't.
Well, the other thing is that, you know, a person might be in a sensitive position, and they're now a matter of
Public record.
Record.
And that is a different story altogether. Because organizations, especially nonprofits, the names of the organizers are public record. So that's something to consider in your needs assessment and in your personal assessment is, how out do I want to be with this? That's a whole another class I give on coming out and whatnot, and there's a whole part of it about just this. How out do you want to be? How public can you be? How public do you want to be? Now, I will say that over the last 10 years of my involvement in the various communities, public opinion of alternative sexualities, relationships, and sexual and gender expression have changed dramatically. People are much more accepting of polyamory, kink, and BDSM than they were 10 years ago. Much more. Now when I talk to people about polyamory, they go, "Oh, you're polyamorous? Yeah, I saw a show about that the other day. It was pretty cool. Oh, you're involved in this organ? Yeah, I heard about y'all." I've also been in CNN, Playgirl Magazine, and all these other places, so my face is pretty public. So a lot of people have heard about it. But so those are a couple of concerns. How do you want to be structured? There's also democratic structures where it's majority rules. There is consensus structure where everybody has to agree on what you do. Not a big fan of consensus model because I don't think you can please 100% of the people 100% of the time. You just can't. Some groups do it, and some groups are very successful with it. Usually those are socialist groups. Nothing wrong with socialist groups. What's that?
Or Quakers.
Or Quakers, yeah. You have to wonder how much of that is social pressure, though, to just conform. That's another topic. Community engagement. Now, here's something that is really close to me because of our group. We are a nonprofit. And how do you engage in your community? We have a responsibility to have a charitable contribution percentage of our income, of our net revenue. Sorry, not income. We don't have income. We have revenue. Of our net revenue has to go back into charitable causes like our own that conform to our mission. So how do you do that? We team with Lost and Found. Lost and Found is here in Atlanta. They do homeless youth shelter housing and support, get them training, job education, get them back in the workforce. And that's how we do it. There are a lot of ways to do it. Habitat for Humanity. A lot of these civic organizations don't care what your group does. They just need help, just like you do. They need volunteers to help plant flowers, build houses, dig ditches, whatever. Adopt a Highway is a really great way to just give back. You can 2 miles of highway, you can pick it in the middle of nowhere where the sign goes up and nobody will ever see it or whatever. And once a month you go out there with a few trash bags and you pick it up and you take it to your local trash collection or recycling bin. You know, there's another one. Set up a public recycling station. Nobody has to know who's running it. Nobody in the public. Hey, bring your recycling here. And then, like my county, we don't have a county recycling. We have to take it to the landfill ourselves. Not everybody does that. So a lot of recycling stuff gets put in the trash. Now, we do it once a month. We load my truck up because we have a lot of people in the house. So we just load the bed of the truck up and go to the dump. But, well, by we, I mean me. I do that once a month on Saturday morning. I get up and do that. But there are 3 kinds of communities I like to identify here. The close community, which is your close inner circle community. The ones that you deal with on a day-to-day basis or a monthly day, whatever. The related community, that's the outer circle overlapping communities. So if you're running a kink and leather poly community, you've got the kink community you represent, the poly community you represent, the leather community you represent, and maybe there's some queer folks in there too that have their own space, so you have the queer community you represent. Was that a question or, okay. Looking at how you interact with all of those and your engagement with them. How much do you want to be involved in each layer of this related community? And then there's the extended / greater community, which pretty much is the general public, right? How involved do you want to be on that level? Like our organization, we teach sex week classes, so we're pretty out there, we're pretty involved. We give trainings to mental health providers. We're developing a program for lawyers, for CLEs, for CMEs, for doctors, all based on alternative lifestyles, sexualities, and gender expression. So we're very involved, we're very public. Not everybody has to be. There's a role that every organization can fill in their own community, and finding that and what you want to be. So knowing your community engagement level, how engaged you want to be, is part of it. And then the last slide that I have, the last thing to talk about, is the impact. How do you gauge your impact? Because you want to know, is what I'm doing working? You can't just know that off of the numbers of people that come to your munches, meetups, social gatherings, whatever. Numbers tell a lot. But are the people who are coming, why are they coming? Are they there for social reasons? Are they there for community? Are they there for education? Are they there for social status? Some people just show up to show up. There's something here in Atlanta that I like to refer to as the culture of busy. If you're not doing enough things, then you don't have social status in the right circles. And then, so I call it the culture of busy. You gotta be busy. We always got something going on. Oh, why don't you come over this? Oh, I can't. I got 14 things I gotta do. I'm guilty of it, and only since I moved to Atlanta. And that's why I think it's pretty specific to Atlanta and major metropolitan areas. When I lived in rural BFE nowhere land, I wasn't busy. I had all the time in the world because there wasn't shit to do. Now there's a ton of stuff to do, and I can't find time to do it. I've got 10 passes to iFly Atlanta sitting on my refrigerator, and I'm like, when am I going to get to go to that? I'll look at my calendar, I'm like, conference, educational day. So I get invited to a lot of things, and I have to turn a lot of them down because I've already made plans. Numbers of members in a meetup group mean absolutely nothing. When I was doing Atlanta Polyamory, we had a little over 1,000 people of members in the group. It's pretty good. We had an average attendance of about 25 people at a meetup. So we polled the audience, the membership. Yeah, it's still like that. We polled the membership. Do you want to be removed from the list? Oh my God, the outcry. No, I love being a part of the community. It serves a great purpose, just knowing that there are people like me around. So just being part of something bigger than themselves was enough for a lot of people in the group. They didn't need to come out to the community. They just felt accepted by being a part of it. So that's measurable, trackable results. These surveys that you send out to people, are you getting what you need? If not, what do you want? Rate our organization on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being you hate it, 5 being we're doing everything right. That sort of thing. How is the organization you're working with accepted by others? Now by others, I mean other organizations like yours and outside of yours. How many of you know of an organization that you don't think fondly of? And that's because they do things that you wouldn't do in that organization. Typically. Sometimes they promote behaviors that you wouldn't promote. Sometimes they hold events that you wouldn't host, and that sort of thing. What do they think about your organization? Maybe the same thing. What would it hurt to send them an email with that same survey that you're asking your members? Ask the general community around you, because you might get some pretty interesting feedback. I know we did that once and heard, hey, we love y'all. Y'all do the stuff we don't do. Thanks. Our membership talks about y'all holding events that we don't host, and I think that's a great thing. Oh, now we've got an open door to collaborate, work together, and do joint hosting of events to bring our communities together. Kind of an interesting, and they might not ever answer you, and that's okay too. Yes?
They could also answer negatively, which gives you information because that's what they're telling other people about you.
Bingo. You also can find out what the gossip is about your group. So that's some really important information to have too. Because if people are telling you one thing about your group, but you're hearing different things from other people, you can get an idea of who not to want to ask to be on your board. Right? Or whatnot. So another one is, are you achieving the goal that you set out in the beginning? Back here when we said, what we want to do. Have you done it? Are you there yet? Are you halfway there? Are you 1/10 of the way there? This is an impact assessment. You're looking at what you've done, how far you've come, how far you've got to go, and what changes you need to make to get there. Because you could set out the plan, you could follow the plan, and you still won't get to your end point. Guarantee you. it could definitely change, of course, along the way. Through vision, through events, through the membership, whatever. And then, is the membership happy? We talked about doing the survey. And are you as representative of the community that you want to build? Are you really representing everyone that you want to? We had a shocker moment the other day in our organization. I was coming back from Jacksonville, talking to some folks on the phone, and it hit me that, there's an entire subset of people that we just forgot to even think about including when we're representing people. An entire subset of people that when we say we're for this, our mission statement is we support those in non-monogamous relationship structure. Ethically, consensually, one of the, I can't remember how we worded it off the top of my head. Consensually non-monogamous relationship structures. That can be anyone that doesn't practice strict monogamy, that is open and honest and consensual about it, including kinky people, students that practice what we call serial monogamy, but they're open about it. Any number of variations of ethically non-monogamous relationships. And we tend to think, when our organization would think about it, we would think of, okay, we got polyamorous, we've got relationship anarchists, we've got swingers, we've got kink play, we've got BDSM, we've got power exchange, we've got, so all the alternative stuff. We never thought about the vanilla people that also practice consensually open relationships. Like, Jada and Will Smith. Like Neil Gaiman and all of his partners. These are people that we represent, whether they know it or not, when we speak about this. So, are you really representative of everyone that you say you are? Sometimes you can take that look back and global picture and try and define everything that you want to represent. I say that to say don't pigeonhole yourself. Back to what we were talking about, like the individual groups, is great. If that's the need that you're fulfilling, great. Fulfill that need. But if your goal is to be something bigger, don't pigeonhole yourself and put blinders onto this one thing. Don't cater to just this one thing. If the community wants more and you want to give it more, don't take those blinders off. Open your mind, open your eyes, open your heart, and welcome people in. It can be really rewarding. You never know where that big check's going to come from. You never know. That person you're talking to about being a member of your organization might work for a big organization, national company, international company that does 100% donation matching. And when they write you their check for $500, their company also writes you one for $500. So that just got you $1,000 for a 5-minute conversation. Never would have thought that would happen to us, but it did in November at a conference. We signed somebody up that happened to work for Apple. Apple does 100% matching. So there are great ways you can leverage your ability to generate revenue. And that revenue is a whole nother topic that would take 2 or 3 hours to discuss all the different strategies in. But has anybody thought of anything I've missed that you've done in your organization communities that you'd like to share? Like, I'm always open to hearing how stuff works for other people, and we've got a few minutes past time already. But just real quick, if anybody has anything they want to share, questions for me related to this, not related to this, thumbs up, thumbs down. Did you all learn something, get good information? You can not lie to me. It's okay to tell me the truth and say you hate me. It's okay. If you all like this and you want to see me more, my cards are on the table. I do travel for education. Try to keep it kind of local-ish. South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia. shoot me an email. If I can't get there, we have other representatives that can. So if I'm not able to get to your area, like up the East Coast, DC, Philadelphia, Jersey, Midwest, we've got folks there. So we can send somebody to your organization to teach different classes. That's part of community organizing, is to get that word out. That we're not just in Atlanta, we're everywhere. So thank you all for spending an hour or so with me. I hope I didn't bore you too terribly bad. And if you have any questions, find me. I'll be around. I have another class in about 30 minutes on the other side of the thing. Thank you all.